Welcome to Glioblastoma AKA GBM, a podcast brought to you by the Glioblastoma Research Organization, highlighting stories of GBM warriors, caregivers, medical advisors, and more. Join us this season as we connect with members of our incredible community and have meaningful and insightful chats regarding all things glioblastoma. Please note that any information provided on the show is not meant to treat, diagnose, or prevent any disease, and all information that is discussed in our conversation is what worked for the individual themselves and should not be taken as advice. The information provided on this show is not a substitute for professional medical advice, and you should contact your medical provider and healthcare team with any questions. Dave Bolton, welcome to Glioblastoma AKA GBM. It is a pleasure to have you on the show and be here with you in London. So exciting to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you as well, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who don't know you, who is Dave Bolton? Tell us a little bit about your background and about yourself.
Well, where do you want to start? So very quickly, I was that annoying kid at school who just excelled at all sports, and sport became my whole life. I left school with decent grades and followed my father and my grandfather's footsteps and joined the military. Joined the Royal Air Force. I served a tour of Operation Southern Watch, which was out in Iraq, based out of Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait, and I was attached to the US Marines and the US Special Forces. Absolutely loved my time out there, and that's kind of where I truly grew up, because being that kid who was great at all sports came me a bit cocky. Once you're out there, you lose all that. And that's kind of where my foundation for my life really set up, because you suddenly learn out there critical thinking, teamwork, discipline, respect. It's just a real eye-opener. I left the forces 3 years later. So I joined at 18, left at 21 and joined Merseyside Police, which is in Liverpool. Flew through the ranks, putting that work ethic that I've always had, that relentless work ethic, into it, and became quite successful. Unfortunately, on September the 6th, 2004, on my day off, I went for a bike ride out into Wales with my colleague, who was my partner on the job in the police. Went into a corner. Unfortunately, as I've come into the corner, if those who knows how to ride a bike, you come off the power, you lean into the corner, then you come on the power. As I've come on the power, there's been diesel and gravel all over the road. Back end's kicked out. One thing you should never do is brake on a corner, but my natural reaction, that autonomous reaction, was to jab that brake. Mm-hmm. That set the bike upright and followed its path onto the wrong side of the road. Usually that wouldn't be too bad, but unfortunately for me, about 20 feet was a 23-ton articulated lorry. When they say time stands still, trust me, it does. I had a full-blown conversation with myself, which must have felt like it was about 10 minutes, milliseconds. That conversation saved my life. The upshot from that was I had to jump from the bike. So I shifted all my weight onto the left-hand side, jumped from the bike, landed on my back and started to slide across onto the left-hand side of the road, which is the right side of the road for us. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I always say fortunately, it depends how you view life, I went under the back wheel of the cab and then the front two wheels of the Arctic trailer. I knew it was bad because my left leg snapped up over my head and was lying at a right angle. I didn't know how bad it was, but I knew it was bad. I completely shattered all my right leg. I'm a massive believer in fate. There was an off-duty paramedic who was behind me, so she must have saved my life, because little did I know that my leg from below my knee had dislocated and had completely severed. I only had a couple of veins that was holding it together. Completely degloved my leg. That means I got no skin whatsoever. I lost 3/4 of my calf. I had to have 6 external pins. Completely shattered my right leg and broke my kneecap into 6 places. Now, they say it's quite hard to break your kneecap, but obviously I like to show off, and so I broke it 6 times. I had to be airlifted to Glenclwyd Hospital, which is in Wales. I was in a coma for a week. I was later told that I was 30 seconds away from dying. So if I hadn't have got to that hospital in 30 seconds, I wouldn't be here now. So I always kind of say, imagine that helicopter, that air ambulance was on a different call, wouldn't be here today. If that pilot had gone to the toilet, had gone to make up, I wouldn't be here today. Yeah. So I believe in fate all the way through. Cut a very, very long story short, I was 4 or 5 months in hospital where I was told that I'd never walk properly ever again. And if by some chance I do, I will always have a stroller, a Zimmer frame or a walking stick. At 23, having just found out that my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was pregnant, I just refused to accept that I would never walk again. I had physiotherapy where I only had, because my leg was left straight for so long, when they removed the pins, my knee didn't bend because scar tissue had grown into that actual joint. I went through 2 manipulations whilst under anaesthetics. That's where they put you to sleep and they just crank your leg as hard as they can. On the second one, my leg still only had 20 degrees movement flexion. Dr. Starmer said to me, unfortunately, if we'd have put an ounce more pressure on, we'd have snapped your femur into about 2 or 3 places, which obviously they can't do. Worked with physiotherapies that got me to 25%, and that was a kind of it. I was told that's it. Paid to see a private specialist, top orthopaedic surgeon who said, I really feel for you, but there's no way that's going to happen. The only way you'll get that life back running is if we amputate your leg below the knee to give you the best chance of prosthetic. Again, I refused. And then I spent the next 9 to 12 months rehabilitating myself quite brutally. I had chairs upside down. My wife, sorry, I'm not having an affair. It's just I've been with her since I was 16. Well, actually 15, she'll kill me for saying that. So it's like I always get confused. So she'd be like putting weights slowly on my, just understanding that ounce more pressure might break it. For 3-4 hours, tears down my eyes, like in agony. Then when we took it off, I couldn't stand due to the pain. But this is what I knew I needed to do to try and give myself the best chance of being able to walk without a walking stick. And as you can see, 12 months later,
1 minute before podcast recording time, looking great.
I know. And then so I can run, walk, snowboard, mountain climb. I love doing outdoor stuff. That's what I'm all about. The only time you can kind of see there's something different is if I sprint, because I don't have that full mechanics, because I only have 100-degree movement. Then kind of was back in work within 9 months of the accident. I then went back to kickboxing, K1, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because that's what I did just before that crash. I'd just been selected to get in the Great Britain team to go to fight in the World Championships in Germany. Obviously, that was taken away from me. So I wanted to get back involved in that kind of sport. I went to see me down to the gym, the dojo, and spoke to the guy, and he said, why don't you look after the kids? So I did. I love the youth development, bringing them on. And then one of the lads needed some sparring, so I kind of got in the ring and sparred with them, and found by changing the way I thought, and I actually thought I was still quite good. Started fighting again. I became ISK Northern title champion, Welsh champion, British champion, and then I got a phone call from the Great Britain's team saying they want me to come down for trials. So this was for me, putting the universe back right. I had that chance in 2004, and obviously it was taken away from me. I dedicated everything. As I say, I'm relentless. No one saw me. 6 months, I'd be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going for a long run. I'd be in work. I'd go over to Next Gen, which is a mixed martial arts place in Liverpool, who actually where Paddy the Baddie, Patrick Pemlet and Molly McCann are at the moment, quite famous in the UFC. And then I'd eat, police officer still at this point. Then I'd eat me tea or dinner. And then I'd go back to the gym. Wow. And this was my life. And then at weekends, I'd be up and down from Nottingham to show that I was serious. Training was, say, 10 o'clock. I'd be there at 8. Training would finish at 4. I'd be there till 6. So I just wanted to show I'm going to put more commitment than anyone.
That's so wild. Just like side note, I like kickboxing as well. And I do an hour class at the gym twice a week, and I cannot walk. Yeah. So I can't imagine
it's
doing
a leveler,
it for 8 hours a day.
You used to have people coming in who were like, I do long distance running. I said, all right, go on the bag. And then after 2 or 3 rounds, they're completely done.
It's exhausting.
But I made the squad, and on November the 2nd, I think it was, 2009, I flew out with the Great Britain team to Pisa, Italy, where we did the opening ceremony. And after 10 fights in 4 days, I made the final. I went into the final with a fractured right wrist and 3 broken toes, but adrenaline's an amazing thing. And after a hard-fought fight, I became world kickboxing champion. I know, yeah.
Very cool.
So, yeah. Fast forward. Life's going really good. It's now 2014, May the 1st, never May the 2nd, because my daughter's birthday. And I'm a detective sergeant in Merseyside Police in charge of a covert unit dedicated for gun crime. Me being me, I'd leave home at like 6 in the morning. Didn't have to be until 8, but I was in charge of all intelligence in the area, all the covert operations. So I wanted to get my head around everything before briefing my team. I was also in charge of being the single point of contact. Any of our nominals, criminals from the Liverpool, Merseyside area, go and commit offences in, say, Manchester, Lancashire, Cheshire, I'd be the one that get contacted. So it's May the 1st, 2014. I say to my team on parade, listen, I need to get off on time tonight because I'm going to be in early tomorrow. I've never got off on time since I've been here. I have to be off on time tomorrow. True to form, that afternoon there was a shooting, an armed robbery in Manchester that went wrong. A firearm was discharged. No one was hurt, but it's a big, critical incident. So I was on the phone trying to get authority from our chief constable or assistant chief constable, which is like kind of the second or the first highest rank in the police, to get authorizations for our firearms unit to be able to pull over the car and potentially use lethal force. The vehicle was lost, but it was still a live, ongoing scenario or critical incident. One of my colleagues said, one of my staff said, Sarge, get yourself off. I've dealt with this before. Joe had done it. So I was like, happy days. Got home about 10:30 at night, just wolfed down some cereal because I hadn't really eaten that day, just to how busy everything was. And then I came round at 1:45, being worked on by paramedics. Suffered a 15-minute grand mal nocturnal seizure in my sleep. Yeah, wow. My first reaction was to kick the paramedics out my house.
Really?
Honestly, yeah. I just woke up groggy. Just woke up groggy, what's doing? Suddenly there's all these yellow jackets, was 2, not all. And I was asking them to get out. My wife, who's a nurse, who's usually in the bed next to me, was on the right-hand side, and she was crying. She said, do you think I would phone the ambulance, you'd stop breathing. I was like, no, I haven't. Go on, lads, can you just get out, please? I've got work. And they went, oh, Dave, don't worry, we're going, because they're brilliant. What do you do for a living? I said, oh, I'm in the police. Where'd you work? Don't know. What's your surname? Don't know.
Wow.
I then noticed there was some blood on my pillow, and I bit the back corner of my tongue off. And then there was a searing pain in my right shoulder. I'd actually dislocated my right shoulder. Wow. So I knew there was something wrong. Got rushed into Arrow Park Hospital, into resus, where they thought I had bacterial meningitis because I was covered in spots, like literally. But my wife, Sam, said, if you at this point, you wouldn't be speaking, you'd be a lot worse. Basically, my seizure was that prolonged that I burst every capillary in my body. So I think I'm quite lucky, really, because a seizure over 5 minutes starves the brain from oxygen. And I've gone for 15 minutes, stopped breathing, and I've got no side effects. So I believe I'm very, very lucky.
For sure.
Long story short, there all day, I'm trying to discharge myself, because that's me. Obviously, I knew there was something wrong, because I had CT scan. I had another CT scan with the iodine. And then they said, we want you to go back for another one, but with iodine in it, and I knew something not right here. And then I was in a room on my own, and the consultant came in and said, we've got some news, and kind of just broke the news. Just said, unfortunately, you've got a large, what looks like tumour in the front hemisphere of your brain, in the glio region. We're not a specialist hospital, but we've liaised with Bolton, which is Bolton Neurological in Liverpool, which is one of the centre of excellence for brain tumours. We've liaised with them, and they believe it. So you've got your appointment on Tuesday. So this was the Friday, but it was a bank holiday. So I had to wait until the Tuesday to go and speak to someone to see what this was. And that was like horrendous 4 days, trying to not knowing what's going on, knowing that something's in my head. And then the thing that kind of got me more was about 6 months prior, I'd worked the Liverpool, it's a football or soccer, depending if you're in America, game. And I'm a big Liverpool fan. And there's a guy who was a big Everton fan, Jim. And we were having a bit of banter. 3 weeks later, he suffered a seizure and a stroke. And he passed away of a brain tumour. So I thought that was what was going to happen to me. So Tuesday, we go into Tuesday. And I'm just so fortunate. I had Professor Eldridge. He's retired now. But he was he wrote the guidelines for neurosurgery for NICE. That's our version, of how it's done. So he was the top at his profession. Saw them, they spanned the screen round. There was a large mass the size of a tennis ball in the front hemisphere. Wow. That was an astrocytoma, grade 2, diffuse. And then I was booked in for surgery 6 weeks later.
Why did it take so long to have surgery?
That's what it is.
Just because?
Just because, yeah. So that 6 weeks was horrific. Didn't sleep. I kind of referred to my bed like a prison. I'd lie there and I just can't go to sleep. And all I had in my head was, I wasn't even that bothered that I potentially was going to die. It was more, I'm going to leave my wife a widow, she's going to have debt, I'm not going to walk my daughter down the aisle, I'm not going to see my lad grow up to be, I know, the amazing man he's going to be. And these just kept swirling in my head. Eventually I'd fall asleep, and then an hour later I'd wake up and they'd just kick off. So I did one or two things. One, I'd go downstairs, do some DIY. Yeah, I can't do DIY. But something would come down, I'd have a door off, I'd be painting it. But the other thing that I was told that I wasn't allowed to do, it's like 5, 6 in the morning, go for a run. For me, that was my time to let it all out. And I sound stupid talking about this now, men's mental health and everything, but I didn't want my family to see me weak. I didn't want my wife to see me cry or be weak, because she was a nurse. She still had to look after the family. So I'd run, and for the first mile, I'd just be literally just crying my eyes out. Why me? And I always used to run past dog walkers. I always kind of think, what did they think was happening? All they see is this grown bloke, and they must think, if you don't like running, mate, why are you doing it? Without no context. It got me running down the street crying, going, why me? And and then the next kind of mile to 2 miles, I sorted me out and came back in. 6 weeks went by, and I was booked into Bolton Neurological, where I was told by Professor Eldridge there was a high chance that I wouldn't make through surgery. But if I did, it was the chance of aneurysms, bleed on the brains, infections, strokes. But also where mine was where my personality was and where my higher level of thinking is. So even if I was to come back, even if I was to make it, I may come back as someone completely different, and I'd never know. So that night I wrote letters to my wife, my sister, my mum, and the kids. I didn't think I was going to make it. Next morning, wheeled down. Quite honestly, I don't really just cried the whole way down. I was put to sleep, and I needn't worried. I was speaking within 3 hours of coming round. I was discharged within 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
And then, so how did the story with glioblastoma begin? So
I'd already chose to take retirement from Merseyside Police, who were brilliant. Retired. I already had my strength and conditioning qualifications anyway. So I started to work as a strength and conditioning coach. Fitness was through the roof. I was quite healthy anyway. But I kind of went down the vegan kind of route. Yeah. Meat, acid and alkaline, but I had eggs. Life was flying, doing brilliantly, working with like England Rugby and the RFU within the communities, working with, because I was combat sport and rugby specialised, they were my two things. I played rugby at a decent level. working with UFC fighters, just loving life. You get your driving license taken off you, obviously with a seizure for a year. So it's just gone a year. I just get my driving license back and I go in to see a random appointment. So I was having scans every 3 months. The thing with Professor Eldridge is he is amazing at what he does, but his personal skills, interaction is not great. I always say to people, it was a bit like Big Bang Theory with Sheldon, who's so super clever, but he can't read. So he was never at meetings. So we walked in, wasn't brought in early or anything. We walked in and Professor Eldridge was sat there with Anna Crofton, who is one of my really good friends now. And she's actually on the board of my foundation.
Oh, amazing.
And I just thought, oh, this isn't good. And they span round. It was just a black walnut-sized mass in the central hemisphere. So it was a new primary tumour. And I just stood up and started screaming at them. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing radio and chemo. I'm not, I think it was a lot of frustrations because I was given 5 years to live with the astrocytoma. Virtually just over a year to the day, I was looking at
another
beast, as we know. But I think that was just the anger more than anything. He said, listen, let's get surgery out the way, then we'll discuss that. I was in surgery that weekend. Dead confident going down for operation, done it before, here we go. Yeah, it kind of all went wrong in surgery because from the scan to surgery, it had doubled in size. That's how aggressive it was.
Wow.
So when they went in, obviously it was double the size of what it is. So obviously the surgery took longer. I spent longer in hospital. I spent about 14 days in hospital trying to get on that pain. And then whilst we're in the hospital, Anna comes up to me and my wife Sam was there and she goes, we've got the histology. Do you want to know what it is? Because I like to know everything, I research everything. And she goes, because she's got that built up, that relationship, it was like tears in her eyes. So I just put my hand on her knee and just went, listen, it's a glioblastoma multiforme. I've got 12 hours to live. Whatever you say is a bonus now, isn't it? And she went, yeah. Do you want to know it all? And I said, is it the usual? As we know, it's 3 months without treatments or 12 to 18 with, they say. But because mine was an IDH1 wild type and how aggressive it was, mine was more 6 to 8 months with treatment. So I had a decision, mate, what do I want to do? Do I want to spend the next 6 to 8 months going through brutal treatment just to pass away, or do I want to spend the next 3 months living the best life I can? And I went away and I slipped into a massive depression, a hole. Never been in one before, just everything was black. I just gave up. I lay on the couch and I was waiting to die. Everything was black. I kind of try and say when I do talks and that, it's, if you can imagine like time-lapse cinematography, where the one thing is stationary in a room and everything's sped up all around, you just see light. That was my life. We only talked about this with my wife, Sam, the other day. She said to me, I was just trying to think of something to kind of spark you back into life, to get you out this rut. And she come up and she said, let's go for a run. I just laughed at her. I'm not going for a run. She goes, why not? I said, why would I? She goes, sport's been your whole life. I competed at the age of 9, sprinting, ran for England, and I'm like, no, that's when I had a life. I'm going to die. Why would I put myself? But as you know, women are always right. So I get dragged out on this run and it is the worst. And she was saying it the other day, she goes, I've never seen it. It was horrific. Like I was sat down, I was retching, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And Sam beat me and that never happens. So I knew there was something wrong. But that night, I felt that little bit better. I slept that little bit better. And the next morning, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I have this watershed moment. And I always credit my wife Sam for this. If I hadn't been on that run, this wouldn't have happened. And I was sat downstairs, 3 in the morning, pitch black, just crying my eyes out, head in the hand. And I suddenly just went, what are you doing? You said you're going to come away and live the best 3 months that you can. What have you done? You've had a pity party and sulking at the life that, cards that life have dealt you once again. Sort yourself out. Now, I didn't think I was going to survive. I didn't think I'd live. I thought if 6 to 8 months is the average, I've never been average at anything. So there must be people that go before that, but there must be people that get up to 18 months. And at that point, I named my tumour Terry, and he was my opponent. And I put myself in a camp like I used to do with fighting. And I got mindfulness right, diet, exercise, alternative therapy, and I tackled it 360 degrees, accepting the gold standard treatment, what it's called over here, to give myself that best chance possible.
That's unreal, and that's incredible. You talk a lot about, you've been through significant experiences in your life, whether it's being run over by a truck to, which is wild, to also, having brain tumor twice, to being in the armed forces. How do you feel like that prior experience has sort of helped you become the person you are today?
I think it definitely has helped. It's built up that kind of mental resilience, but I kind of take it all the way back really to my childhood, how I was brought up. I don't see it as a bad way, but for me, I didn't get beaten in a sprinting race for 100, 200 from the ages 9 to 12, 13, but I never got a well done, never got a, it was always, you look to the side, score 4 tries, you missed the tackle, and that was the male side of my family. But I see that's a positive because that's made me want to be the best at everything. Nothing's ever good enough. And I think that relentless approach is why I've overcome a lot of things. I don't know, but this is kind of when I look back on everything that's happened. Yeah, so I bring that. And then obviously growing up in the military, out in Iraq and Al Salem in Kuwait. I think they've all kind of built up that resiliency in me, those life experiences that have really helped me to overcome most things.
So in your previous conversation, you talk a lot about how you tackled brain cancer from a 360-degree angle, including, supplementation and nutrition and activity. How did you decide to do that? And how did you find what works for you in the way that you're now able to help others with the same methodology?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is, the beginning was trial and error. And as I said before, I like to research everything. The way I went down the road with that is, obviously I was working as a strength and conditioning coach, working with professional athletes. And when you're working with them, you're looking for that 1%. And that 1%, don't get me wrong, I loved what I used to do. That 1% is them not making the team, not getting a knockout. In the grand schemes of life, it doesn't mean anything really. So I decided to kind of retrain as a cancer rehabilitation specialist. Went through that, and having, say, a breast cancer patient or a brain tumour patient cry in front of you because they've been given up on by the NHS, told that they've got like 4 months to live and they're still there 18 months later, is the most rewarding thing I can ever do, especially the one with the breast cancer. She had cording, really bad scar tissue from the removal of dissection of all lymph node, really good golfer, told she'd never play golf again. She was given up on. She worked with me for 6 months on rehabilitation and her mindset. And then just before Christmas, she became the Wirral, so it's the peninsula near us, women's champion for 2022. So that was huge. So we hit that socials, yeah. So for me, and on that course, you learn so much. It's unreal. Like, I didn't understand that exercise inhibits cancer growth by up to 50 to 60%, whereas chemo and radio is only 30 or 40. But with exercise, it has that intrinsically linked to our mental health. When we exercise, we kick out all those feel-good chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, norepinephrine, adrenaline, and that physically changes up the makeup within the brain. It makes it more positive. It alleviates stress, depression, helps to sleep. You've said, remember before, did that little bit of exercise. I slept that little bit better. It's massive, builds the immune system, and cancer is a disease of the immune system. So that's what I'm so passionate about, is raising the awareness of not just brain tumours, but the power of exercise and mindfulness.
Yeah. How would you say, or what would you deal with? Let's say there was a patient that came to you, they say, hey, Dave, I'm newly diagnosed with, XYZ cancer, and I just went through surgery, or I'm about to go through surgery, and you talk a lot about physical activity, but let's say someone's not physically able in that situation. Like, how do you work with them and what do you do?
It's not what you can do. It's not what you can't do. It's always what you can do.
Okay.
And we have had people who are diagnosed with cancer, and don't use the word patients. We're not patients, we're people. And we work with them. So you do a full assessment with them, and we look, there's always something they can do. Physical exercise isn't stupid stuff that I do. It can just be going for a brisk walk. That is still going to get the heart rate up. And what you tend to find with a lot of people who've been diagnosed with cancer is that they withdraw into themselves. They don't go out. So they're socially inapt. And isolation is biologically destructive to the central nervous system. We need that human interaction. So for me, it's about getting out into the open, even if it's just a brisk walk, 5 minutes. But there's always something they can do, definitely. But it's also the mindfulness. So if they can't do that, we'll work with them online. We'll go and visit them, and we talk through how they're getting on, what the steps they can put in place, and we try and keep them focused.
Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is proud to sponsor the Glioblastoma AKA GBM podcast. Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is a small biotechnology company hoping to make a big difference in the treatment of glioblastoma. Using their proprietary nanotechnology, Biodexa is developing liquid formulations of an investigational drug which can be delivered directly and locally into the tumor via an implanted catheter. This drug has been previously investigated in pediatric patients with brain tumors. Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is currently running a clinical trial in patients with recurrent glioblastoma known as the MAGIC G1 trial. To find out more about the MAGIC trial, visit magictrials.com. Imagine waking up from brain tumor removal surgery knowing that your radiation treatment is already underway. That's how gamma-tile therapy works. At the end of brain tumor removal surgery, the neurosurgeon implants the gamma-tiles where the tumor is most likely to return. So instead of waiting to start daily standard radiation treatments that go for weeks, you get a head start against tumor cells and get back to your life sooner. For operable brain tumors of all types, including glioblastomas, brain metastases, meningiomas, gamma-tile therapy is a one-time, targeted radiation treatment with fewer side effects and far less chance of hair loss than external radiation. Gamma-tile therapy is tough on tumors and easier on patients and caregivers. Learn more at gammatile.com. Gamma-tile therapy is an FDA-cleared radiation therapy for patients with newly diagnosed malignant brain tumors and recurrent brain tumors. Novacure is pleased to support the Glioblastoma AKA GBM podcast. Novacure strives to extend survival in some of the most aggressive forms of cancer through the development and commercialization of their innovative therapy called Tumor Treating Fields. Novacure partners with the Glioblastoma Research Organization to work together on behalf of patients and their loved ones impacted by GBM. To learn more, visit novacure.com. Rune was built by a team of patients, caregivers, and medical experts, consisting of neurosurgeons, neuro-oncologists, psycho-oncologists, radiation oncologists, nurse practitioners, and social workers who have devoted their lives to treating and helping glioblastoma patients. For anyone navigating GBM, Rune offers a wealth of medically vetted, digestible video answers to common questions. Answers are organized into major topics ranging from surgery to radiation to caregiver mental health. Check it out at rune.com. What does mindfulness look like for you?
Mindfulness is like, it's having a clear head. It's not worrying about something that you don't have good control of. What is the point of worrying about something that you have no physical control of? And I know that's easier said than done, but it's something that I've kind of implemented. And when I talk about meditation, yeah, it is sitting in a room, legs crossed, that. But meditation is anything that takes your mind off what's going on in your external life, those stresses, whether it's cancer, whether it's your treatment, whether it's what you've done at work. And that can be anything from golf, knitting, reading, going to the gym. That is meditation. That is mindfulness. With the foundation, we also put on courses. We have it online. We have a waiting list of nearly 60 now to come on our rehab course. So we put on mindfulness for chronic pain, which is done online. It's, for me, mindfulness and acceptance is massively important in the fight against cancer.
Yeah. And I think also, you talk about having a positive outlook, which is super apparent because, you walk in here all smiles and everything. And, what motivates you to stay so positive? Because obviously everyone has bad days, but what do you find that grounds you back?
Everyone kind of says, oh, you're so positive. Not all the time. There is days, I wouldn't be human. There is days where I wake up and I go, sod this, can't be arsed anymore. I'm done. Why am I helping everyone else? Why, what my situation, I'm just done. But I know at the end of the day, I'll draw a line in the sand. And I'll say, tomorrow's going to be the best day. And I wake up and I'm like, right, you've had your moan. Let's crack on. When I talk to people, that they're important those days. It's when those days lead into the next, that's when you need your support network, your family, your friends to kind of highlight that potentially you're slipping into a mental health like depression or something.
What do you think are your favorite ways that you find mindfulness? I mean, are you still doing boxing? I'm assuming you run. I see that all over Instagram. So what else do you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I just the gym. Just love the gym. That for me, that's my part of my protocol. When I was younger, my mum always said that the teachers brought me in and said, your son's got a gift, but if we could bottle him, but you need, basically I was so hyperactive, but you need to channel it, because you can go one or two ways. You can go down the bad path or good. So for me, I was thrown into sport, which was brilliant. So sport's my kind of leveler. If I can't train for 6 or 7 weeks, which happened recently, it gives me shoulder, it's not great. But I like doing that. I love snow. I love being outside, mountain climbing, going snowboarding. So, that's my sort of, my church is on the side of a mountain.
Okay.
Yeah. Not a religious person, but that's where I am.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that when you got your diagnosis, your kids were born?
Yeah. So what I think's quite lucky is that they never saw, so my daughter was about to be 6, my son must have been about 9. They never woke up in the night with all the paramedics in. They never saw anything that.
Wow.
So my daughter woke up on her birthday with my mother and father-in-law in the house.
Oh, wow.
Because we were in hospital.
How do you teach them about your cancer experience? And I'm sure, you want to continue to give them this resilience and positivity as a father. How do you continue to do that? Or how do you do that with them day to day?
Just by being there. Because the one thing I'm grateful for having cancer is having a new outlook on life. As I said before, I worked 14 hours a day, never at home. At weekends, I'd play rugby at a high standard. On a Sunday, I'd coach it. So I was never there. And then what I did is, I had a lot of money, we went on massive holidays, but the kids don't want that, they just want you there. So for me, it's me being there, showing up for them. And, even my lad, just last year, he's about to turn 18, went, so glad you got ill. I was like, why? He says, because you're here. And there's been loads where I go watching my daughter's amazing at drama, in stage school and everything. And she's Matilda, in Matilda. And I wouldn't have been there.
Cool.
I wouldn't have been at half of these things. I've got better relationships with my family. Not that I had bad ones, but certainly with my sister, because I left home quite early, I could text her, message her once every 4 or 5 months. Now I find it physically weird if I've not spoke to her within 2 days. my whole outlook on life's changed. So for me, it's by showing them positivity, relentlessness, teaching them how I've kind of been brought up, hopefully. And I know it is with my lad so far. I've given three pieces of advice. So if you never listen to me or learn anything from me, these things, don't be late for anyone, because you're basically showing them that your time is not worth me turning up. Don't cut corners. And whatever you do, be relentless at it. And always be kind to people, because you don't know what's going in their situation. And he at the moment, he's flying with what he does. So,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's also very good advice. I like the not being late thing. I also think the same way. I like to be
that's the military.
very punctual.
You're late in the military.
Yeah,
you don't want to notice it. That gets drummed out of you straight away.
Speaking of advice, what is some advice you'd give to someone that just got diagnosed with a brain tumor?
I'd say they need to kind of go through the cycle, and that's kind of the anger of why me. Because that's what I did. It just happens in movies, TVs. It doesn't happen to me. And then you get, why? And then it's like, why isn't it happening to the rapists, the murderers, the scum of the earth, shall we say? Then it goes to sadness. I don't want to die. Cry, cry, cry. Then eventually you get to that acceptance, and that acceptance, actually, it's 1 and 2. So it shouldn't be why me. It should be why not me. And then for me, it's go through those stages: scream, shout, cry, get angry. Because that's a negative emotion that's stored in your body. And when we've got a negative emotion, it causes stress. Stress causes cortisol. Cortisol's an inflammatory, and we definitely don't want inflammatories in our body. But then the quicker we can switch that flip to fight and to attack it, the better chances that we've got. What's
some advice that you would give to a spouse of someone that just got diagnosed with some type of cancer? You mentioned that Sam was...
Why she's still with me, I still don't know.
You mentioned that, she's been with you for this journey. And is there anything that she did in particular that was like really helpful for you? I know you mentioned like her getting you to go on this run, but like anything else that you can think of that's just very helpful?
It's hard. It's just being there for them, picking them up when they're down. She's just incredible. And I always said that I know it must be harder for the spouse, for the family, than it is for the person, for myself. I know I'm going to try and fight this. They've just got to be there to kind of support, to help, to pick you up. And I know that for a fact, because unfortunately my mum was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2016. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2018. And although I had this protocol, I had this regime, and I was trying to put it on mum, I just felt completely helpless. So really, it's just to be there. But also, you've got to speak to people yourself, because it's always focused on the person who's diagnosed with cancer. No one really focuses on the spouses. And that's what our foundation is changed. And it's making sure that they have someone to speak to, make sure they have an outlet. Similarly, like I said before, I didn't want my wife to see me cry, the same's the other way around.
Sure.
But it's just, if someone's going through it, it's just be there for them, listen to them. And sometimes you do need to give them a bit of kick up the ass.
Right. And also speaking of a support system, you started an incredible foundation called the Ahead of the Game Foundation. I would love to hear more about, I know what inspired it, but more so like what you guys are still doing day to day and the impact that you hope to make in society through this incredible foundation you've started.
It just started about 3 years ago. I kind of thought, obviously, as we know, the stats around brain tumours are horrific. The funding across the world, certainly Britain, is dreadful. And I just wanted to think, how can I make an impact in this world to do with brain cancer, or help people who are going through similar situations? Because I had a very big support network. Imagine someone going through on their own. And that was kind of the drive. I just thought that this idea, then COVID happened, and eventually I started as a CIC. So that's that Community Interest Corporation. So it wasn't a charity. It's a non-profit organisation. So I started that with myself and a guy called, I asked him to come on board, Dominic Matteo. So he's an ex-professional footballer for Liverpool, Leeds.
European football.
Yeah, European. Yeah, sorry, soccer. I do love your football as well, by the way.
I'm a basketball person, so there's no offense either way.
One of our greatest claims to fame at basketball is we don't play it. When we were out in Kuwait, we played a 3-on-3 against the Americans.
Oh,
and
interesting.
We beat them.
Really? It's funny. My dad's in the UConn. I don't know if you know University of Connecticut. He's in like the UConn Hall of Fame. He was like point guard. Yeah.
No way.
So my parents, there was like a battle. They were like, my mom was like, she's gonna be a ballerina. My dad's like, she's gonna be a basketball player. My mom won the fight, just like you mentioned. Sam won. That we were talking about earlier about how he has 3 sausage dogs.
Yeah, miniature ones as
Mini
well.
Mini ones that he won. He lost the battle in the dog fight. So
I wanted a Doberman, but women are always right, aren't we?
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. 4 dogs isn't so bad.
Yeah, you sound like her. It is.
And sorry, continue about the foundation.
CIC, and then brought on the Dominic Matteo as well, and just started. And what I wanted to do is put things in place that weren't available when I was going through it. So, I get a brain tumor and stuff. There was no counselling. I didn't even know I had metal plates in my head. I worked that out myself. So I wanted to put in a place, set up something. I didn't have this idea to support not just the person diagnosed with cancer, but also the family. So I went on this cancer rehabilitation course so I can deliver alongside, I can work alongside doctors, oncologists, physiotherapists, and prescribe, coach people's daily lives, but also certainly the activity side of things. And that's what we started to do. We've then got counsellors involved, family support counsellors, just in case people need to use it. We've only had 2 people have only had to use them. And we've just slowly started to build out. We became a charity on the 11th of November, which allows us to access more funding and be able to access grants.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Because what we've now got, as I said before, we've got a waiting list of about 60 to 70 around the world. 2 weeks ago, I just started delivering sessions to Australia, Melbourne, Australia, to a girl with a glioblastoma. We've got people in Zimbabwe. We've got 3 in America, 1 in South Africa. And it's just built up from there. But not just that, we provide, as I was saying to you before, when people donate money to us or do fundraising, unlike a massive global one where it gets sank in, we make sure that they know where that money has gone to. So there's a girl called Libby Wood. She did a skydive, raised £1,600, 1,600. So what we did is we put that towards a mindfulness course for chronic pain. So we put it out online and in person. There was 8 people on it, and that paid for them. The feedback was unreal to how it's helped them, how they use it to cope through their diagnosis. So massively, it's not just about the physical, it's also about the mental and the emotional as well, that support. And we then brought Kelsey Parker on board. So one of my very good friends was Tom Parker in the boy band, The Wanted.
It's actually crazy. I was like the biggest Wanted fan. I was like such a fangirl. I for sure had posters like in my house. I was a big fan.
Yeah.
So
I know how big they were.
Yeah.
Because I've got half of his fans follow me, and it's just mental.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah. But so I was really close with Kelsey and Tom throughout the diagnosis. Unfortunately, he passed away just come up to a year now, which was hard. So then just trying to think what we could do. I wanted to keep Tom's name going because me and Tom had both been in our Houses of Parliament, maybe it's like the Senate over where you are, speaking to Lords, MPs, so it'd be senators and Congress, debating the underfunding for brain tumours, because obviously brain tumours in this country receive 1 to 2% of the whole national funding towards cancer, yet they are the biggest killer of adults under the age of 40 and children globally. It makes no sense why we are the least funded. And if it was to take, and when we're there, we're not saying we want to take money away from other kind of cancer charities or cancers, but if we were to go being funded the way we were, it'd take us 150 years to get to where breast cancer is currently.
Same in the US.
Yeah. So we were in there together, Westminster, and Tom just had no filter. It was hilarious in there. I'm not going to go into what he said. And then, unfortunately, he passed away. So, and I know Kelsey's amazing. So I kind of just said, Kelsey, would you like to come on board and be his voice? Because she has a unique experience to what Dominic Matteo had a brain tumour. And that's how I helped him through the dark days and asked him to come on board with his reach. And I said, you've got a unique perspective because you've lived with someone who's had a glioblastoma and passed away. I don't have that. I've not lived with anyone. And her coming on board has really elevated us globally. That's the reason why I think we've gone, because when we announced it, we were live on ITV News. It was like an exclusive. And we've just, because of Kelsey and bringing her on board, it's elevated us 5 years ahead of where I could have ever thought of. And it's brilliant.
That's
we're
incredible.
Now ahead of the game, is now bridging the gap in rehabilitation. Where it's needed with the NHS, have it being able to reach globally now, it just really means we're really starting to make a mark. And the girl in Australia, Amy, wrote us a testimony saying there's nothing like this in Australia. I've never heard anything. She didn't think she'd get on it because she lived, but we raised money and we've put about £10,000 into the online side of things.
That's
so we can now deliver what we deliver in our rehab facility globally now.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
On all the success. And I'm excited to continue seeing where ahead of the game goes. And I'm excited to have you on the show because I think a lot of our listeners that may not have heard about the foundation before are going to be able to hear and be able to have access to all these resources, it's just incredible. So really, really exciting to talk to you. A few rapid fire questions before we finish. What is it like to get radiation and treatment? It's
hard to explain. One of the worst bits is actually getting the mold fitted for your mask. So you're there for like 20 minutes with clay on. It actually takes you longer to get into position than it does the radiotherapy. But I always said it's like going into a microwave, get my head fried. You go in as one person, you come out as someone completely different. Sometimes I'd be lying there on the bed and you'd be thinking something, then nothing. And I always come out frazzled, fried, drained. It was like, I always called it, I'm just going to get zapped or microwaved. And you just come out with someone different. And everyone's different. So what everyone's cancer's different. There is a unique to them as their DNA or their fingerprints. So sometimes what happens to me doesn't happen to other, but for me, treatment was hard. I had so many setbacks, it was unreal. In my last week, so I was having dual radiotherapy and chemo. So I was having my chemotherapy 20 minutes before I was having radiotherapy. And in my last week, I suffered a full psychological mental breakdown.
Wow.
Lost the plot completely. It was nearly sectioned. I was in hospital for 4 days. And actually what they found out was the reason why this had happened was because I'd been left on steroids, dexamethasone steroids, for too high a dose for too long. And that with the radiotherapy, the chemotherapy, was the perfect storm just to flip. So I believe I'm quite lucky because I don't have to go yearly for mental health checks because it wasn't my own brain chemistry. It was a foreign, the steroids. And that was a tough time.
What's it like to take chemotherapy?
Horrendous. Yeah.
What is the process?
So over here, I'd had chemo and radio. So I had 150 milligrams of temozolomide, which I think is the standard for glioblastomas.
Yeah, in the US as well.
Is it the same? Yeah. And then I went on to, had 6 weeks off and then did 6 cycles, so 6-month cycles. So I'd start taking my chemotherapy for 5 days. So obviously it's ingested in tablet form because we have a blood-brain barrier. Therefore, the easiest way to get the chemotherapy in is straight through the stomach, unfortunately. So week 1, so I'd be in it for 5 days, Monday to Friday. That week, First cycle, not too bad. Well, I'll say that. And then I'd be the second week, I'd be recovering, feeling like horrendous. Third week, I'd be up, getting outside. And the last week, I'd go to the gym. But we're talking really light stuff, nothing major. But on my first cycle, they didn't give me enough anti-sickness tablets, antiemetics. So on the last day of taking chemo, from 9 o'clock in the morning till about 7, 8 in the next morning, I was sick every half hour. Violently horrendous. So I'd feel sick, threw up, soaked my clothes. Got changed. In the end, I just stayed naked because I just knew it was going to happen. Horrendous. Got rushed to hospital. Was put on, so it was cyclazine that I had, which are the cheapest ones. So they put me on the drip. That was great because it was completely off my head, and it took away that pain. Second cycle, they give me more. So the second month, same thing happened again. The end of the day, rushed back in. My oncologist said, we've never had anyone so sick as you.
Wow.
I was like, okay. So then they tried me on Danzatron, which is another antiemetic. Same thing happened again, rushed into hospital. And at this point, I'm thinking if I had a loyalty card for the NHS, I'd have a whole entire hospital named after me by now, the amount of times I've used it. So then they said, right, we're going to try on what's called Aprions. It'd never been trialed with a brain tumour patients before. And I was like, okay, guinea pig, great. But that actually worked. Then cycle 5, and this is where we're going on about like kind of that mindfulness, that trying the ability to kind of forget about things. I love rugby, as I think we discussed. And every year we went down to it's called the Six Nations tournament in this country. And it's France, Italy, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland. And we did it every year. And I just wanted a break. I just wanted a break from the reality of what I was going through, the situation I was in. Not that you could ever forget it, but I wanted just to have a bit of normality. I stopped taking my anti-seizure tablets 2 weeks before going down with the lads because I was told that I'd never have a seizure again. I'll never try some. So Keppra is the brand name. They say that one drink will be like having 8. Now, I didn't want to get drunk. I just wanted one drink with the lads, just at the rugby. So we drove down. We finished taking my chemotherapy tablets on the Friday morning, and we drove down Friday afternoon down to Windsor in London. One of my friends, Nick, bailed on me or decided he wasn't coming at the last minute. So I had to get my old best mate from school who doesn't like rugby to come with us. I said, it's a free weekend. All you need is your beer money. So he jumped in. We got down to the hotel at Hilton. They messed the rooms up. So we were all in double bedrooms. So Matt jumps in with me. That night, felt a bit ill, but nothing major. Went to watch the rugby the next day. Came back to Windsor in the evening. I felt horrific. Horrendous. Yeah, I just thought, I just don't feel well, lads. I'm going to go back to the hotel, carry on. And usually what would happen in Windsor, we'd be out till 4 a.m, a few clubs, bars. I said, I'm going back. My mate Matt went, I'll come back with you. I said, no, you don't need to. I said, just go out and enjoy yourself. You know them. He's like, he just got married to Katie, who's lovely. And he wanted to get up in the morning and buy her a present from Windsor, that honeymoon period. That didn't last long, but no, they're still married, by the way. So we get back and he goes, you all right? I said, yeah, I just can't sleep. I then came round 2 days later in hospital in Slough with my wife and my sister there. I'd suffered 6 seizures overnight. And if Matt hadn't been in there in that room, I probably wouldn't be here now because he raised the alarm. He got the paramedics there. And it was only when they turned up and administered them, I stopped having seizures. I completely dislocated both shoulders and I bit my tongue clean in half and I was littered in bruises. So if Matt wasn't there, I wouldn't be here today. So yes, that was a massive setback. And then cycle 6 was okay. I just felt horrific. And I remember I was part of the Tom Parker documentary, and Tom is skin and bones. He's on the thing and he refused to do cycle 6. And I said to my wife, can't believe he didn't do cycle 6. And she just looked at me and said, you refused. I forced you into it. And I don't really remember that, but apparently that's what I was like. So chemo, it just strips who you are. completely, but not just physically or mentally, emotionally as well. I always thought, well, this is what I'm saying, I'm quite quick-witted, I'm quite sociable. For 4 years after, I'd go out with the lads and I had nothing to say. And I'd just be like, is this me now? But slowly it starts to come back. So chemotherapy, it's for me, it's evil, but it's a necessary evil. People say, do you wish you'd done it now? I'm like, I think it gave me that start because I wasn't prepared to gamble my family or my life trying a natural route with just 3-month window. I do think it gave me that head start to be able to put things in place to really get that 360 plan fully implemented. So what's chemotherapy like? Unless you've been through it, I can't really explain it. When people go, I must understand, you physically can't. It just destroys who you are. It's like having a hangover, but times 40,000. It just strips you of who you are, who you used to be, like hopes for the future. But as I always say to people is, you won't see a light at the end of the tunnel, but there is one there. And before you know it, it'll be over. I look back now and this like 9 years ago. And I'm like, I can't believe that's how long ago it was. So you will get through it. You know, pain, adversity is temporary, but quitting or not even trying, well, that's it really.
Is there anything that helped you during chemo? Like I know you mentioned that, like obviously the anti-nausea to an extent, but like, is there anything else that did help you or make you feel better during the process?
CBD.
Okay.
It was a good one because it's good for anti-nausea, but it's great for other things. Watching a decent box set on the couch. But it is Breaking Bad. Sat there just watching it all, trying to take your mind off the pain. I couldn't eat. I had ulcers, I had sores, but everything I tasted was metallic. So food became a fuel for me. So it was then looking at proteins with stuff or really spicy stuff or sour just to be able to get that taste. People, I deal with people all over the world. I speak to them and they're saying, I just don't want to eat anymore. I said, forget looking at it as a pleasure. You have to get those nutrients in. You have to get that in to be able to keep going through your chemotherapy, because if you drop too much weight, you potentially can't have chemotherapy. It's
How would you tell people about your diagnosis, or like, if someone has cancer, like how would you tell someone about a diagnosis that you newly got?
I think it's very personal and very subjective. The way I did it is when I was in hospital, I've got like 3 really close friends that I've had. Called them up and asked them to come to hospital and then broke that news to them. And then it's just, for me, we didn't want to do it in our house. So we went to, it was the weather was amazing back then. So we'd go to a local pub so the kids they were only young, the kids could run around and we sat there and we'd tell people and we'd talk it out. It's a hard conversation to throw. I know a lot of people don't want to tell their children what they're going through, but I'd gone from being never at home to suddenly at home to then going into, they worked with us. The thing that they did is, they told our kids, my wife Sam went in there, and they read a book to them and they showed them. So telling people is hard when it is subjective, but I think you've got to tell people because those people are going to be there when you're at your lowest, and you don't know how strong you'll be until your strength is all you have left, and they are the ones who'll pick you up.
That's really great, And, Dave, such a pleasure to have you on the show.
More pleasure.
It's been so much fun. Thank you for meeting me. Couple hours away in the middle of London.
Yeah.
Where it's freezing.
It is
so cold. I really appreciate it. And it was so awesome to have you on the show. And I think a lot of people will really enjoy hearing your story. And I'm super thankful to meet you. It's awesome to finally see a man in person off of Instagram.
There you go, yeah. I'm famous for having cancer. It's just what I always wanted. But just if you're out there, just remember that there is another way. There is another option and there is hope. And remember the signs, the doctors and that, they go off averages. And just remember that you're not average.
That's it for this week's show. Thank you so much for tuning in again to another episode of Glioblastoma AKA GBM. To get in touch with our organization, visit us online at gbmresearch.org or visit us on Instagram or Facebook at Glioblastoma Research. Visit us on Twitter at glioblastoma.org or visit us on LinkedIn at Glioblastoma Research Organization. To make a donation to the organization, which is fully tax deductible, visit us online at gbmresearch.org, where you can designate your donation in honor of someone or find other methods that you can make a donation with. Thank you again for supporting us, for supporting the show, and we'll see you next week. Welcome back to another deep dive with Staff Strong. Today, let's talk about this episode with Dave Bolton. What was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, he got into, I think it was towards the end, a bit about how to tell others about your diagnosis, right? Coming from a patient's perspective. And that's a really hard question, right? And I think it's something that we oftentimes, people come to us, right? As we're helping them through those early stages of like, how do I tell everyone, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to be there for my loved one. We're going through so many appointments and treatments, and how do you keep everyone apprised, or what's the right way to tell people? Who do you tell? Who don't you tell? Again, I think it's a very similar conversation to grief for everyone. And there's no right or wrong kind of way to do it, but know that it shouldn't be something you have to worry about.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's what it comes down to for me if I put myself back in those early day shoes, it was something we thought about, right? Like
I didn't know how to tell anyone.
How did you, right? Like what did you do in those early days? Like by the time you found out, like how were you telling other people?
I felt like I didn't share it publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously my whole family knew, and I remember I was fortunate that I had like a nanny that lived with me my entire life, and she was like second mom. Like she's still part of our family to this day. She was so close to my dad, so like she was the first person that I probably told. And I remember I had to like think about how to tell her. We like went to lunch. I was like, it's just so hard to come out and be like, my dad has brain cancer, because then like the other person is like, when I found out I was just like, what are you talking about? And it's not easy by any means, but I feel like I kind of just like picked like the handful of people that I wanted to know what was going on, that I felt like were close enough to my family that it was important that they knew what was going on. And I kind of just was like, this is the situation. But I mean, looking back even now, it feels like I just fully like blacked out, and like totally. I don't remember like a lot of that time, and I feel like everything is fully a blur. I couldn't tell you. I remember I called my best friend and told her, but it was her birthday the day that I found out. So I was like, I can't call her on her birthday and tell her my dad has brain cancer. So then I called her the day after, and she started crying. And it's just like, it's hard because like you're also dealing with these emotions. I can't imagine how it is from a patient perspective by any means, but I remember just my particular situation. And I just like called my friends, and I was just like, my dad has brain cancer, and they were just confused. Like, and I was confused, and you kind of cry for a little bit. You just don't really know what to do. And honestly, you kind of just like black out. And then I woke up here 5 years later. Yeah. So like, that's one thing. But I do remember my dad didn't want to necessarily tell people. I don't think it was right of me to do this, but like looking back, I kind of was like, you have to tell people. And not that I forced him to, but I was like, you have all these friends, people that care about you, and like patients that you talk to all the time. You can't just like disappear off the face of the earth. And like, I think he didn't want to tell anyone because he was really upset that was his diagnosis. But there was a lot of, he was a chiropractor, so he had a lot of like, he was part of this like medical group, and he had a lot of different friends. And I was like, you have to like tell your friends, like, and he didn't really want to, but he ended up doing it. They sort of decided like if they wanted to like, kind of get more involved, or kind of just be like, I'm going to remember your dad as like how he was, and I don't want to see anything to do with him. I think it was hard for him as a patient to tell people. I think he didn't want to. Yeah. But I also meet a lot of people through the organization that are really comfortable sharing their story and find a lot of really great support through sharing it. So for me, again, like, back to the original question after my super long tangent, I found it important to tell people that were closest to me. My dad wanted to tell no one. And, people that I see all the time through day to day on social media are telling everyone. So I think it's just, you kind of just have to go with your gut. Yeah. I mean, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Go with your gut, right? Like, do what feels right for you, and realize there's no right or wrong. We were, interesting part for us is we try to keep it like, again, I have no aunts and uncles, right? I have no grandparents. So like from a number one route, I mean, it was 5 of us. So my brother had a seizure. We were supposed to meet up that night. His best friend, thank goodness, was with him. Does a lot with Special Olympics and was used to what my brother went through. So it was actually a really important part of it. When he called me, I still remember, like, when he called me, I was 2 hours away, and I thought it was a joke. It was so odd to me. And, like, it didn't process, like, 2 hours later. And I got an Uber, and I came back, and I met him there. And I was the one who had to call my mom and dad. And I had to call my sister, right? Yeah. Like, so even taking a step really to the premise of it, I had to break that news to my parents and my sister. And, like, that was the hardest thing I ever did. And I think because of that, I didn't want to have to call anyone else. So I had to tell my parents their firstborn son had a brain tumor. I had to tell my little sister, right, our baby sister, that her oldest brother had a brain tumor. And flash forward to as we tried to figure out who to tell and how to tell, I remember my mom kind of, I told this person, make sure we tell this person, and someone recommended Caring Bridge. I don't know if you've seen that, or it's basically
I've heard of the name before.
Yeah, it's basically a platform, right? It's Facebook basically, but Caring Bridge, where like you don't have to worry about who's your friend or who's not your friend. You post it, like we posted the update, and everyone could share it, right? Like it immediately took the burden of like, well, how was surgery? Well, how was this?
Interesting.
Well, how was that? Right? Yeah. Like I remember very early on, like having to text the 50 closest people and being like,
I wish I would have known about that.
This is what happened today. I
literally had to do that. Yeah,
and that's what we did in the very beginning. Then we started to do this Caring Bridge, and again, everything works differently for different people, but I can like vividly recall a bit of a immediate burden lifted from us, because we didn't have to think, oh gosh, is our neighbor gonna think we're not thinking of them by letting them know what just happened, when I'm like, Mom, G just got out of brain surgery, right? Like, so Caring Bridge for us was a really good avenue. Obviously this is before Stash Strong to do that, and then for us Stash Strong kind of became a point of ultimate visibility of what my brother was going through, and our events were ways to like see my brother. But that's kind of what worked for us, and that's why I thought this when he said that was interesting, because I remember struggling with that, and I have families that like, how do I tell his best friend who lives 20 states away? It's like you have to find a way. Again, some people, like you said, your dad, don't want to tell other people. I think everyone responds to it differently that hears it, so that's the difficult part, and I think they want to support, right? And so when they're not aware, they can't do anything, and it just kind of makes the situation even harder, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's tricky for sure. I also noticed that, through the organization, and since we've started our Warrior Wednesday series, we share stories, but even more so that I feel like all over Instagram now, there are a lot of people just sharing, they're creating accounts. I think even the episode with Amani's parents, how they mentioned that the account was first started to share all this information about their daughter, because it is extremely taxing to message hundreds of people. I mean, at least for me, I was at the hospital with my dad all the time, and then it's like my mom, she'd be working, so she'd come in and out, but like I was post-university, like not working, so I was just kind of there all the time. And so doctors were telling me all the information. And so I'd have to spend 30 minutes on the phone with my mom, giving her the full update. And then I would have to call my grandparents, because they were, they're still alive, so I would have to give them the full update. And then it's like, okay, who do I have to call next? My dad's sister. I have to give her the full update. And then I'd have to call like my grandma, like my great aunt, so my grandmother's sister who was alive at the time. It's a lot.
Yeah, like how taxing was that on you?
I didn't want to talk to anyone. And it was also, it was hard for me because I became this like point of contact. And so people kind of came to me for every single thing. And I was just like, guys, like, I'm a kid. I was literally 21 at the time. And like, it was hard. I mean, you were also young. You were 25, as you said. Like, how was that for you?
Yeah, again, I think
before Carrying Bridge, which like
we also shared a lot. We went to the same university,
my
brother and I, so we shared a lot of friends. So it was my brother's story to tell, right? Again, if you talk about those first couple months with brain surgery and chemo, and what's this word that I have now, right? Glioblastoma. It was his to share. So like I had friends that were like, they were definitely my friends, and like I could talk to them about it and let them know, but. He was also nonchalant. He was, shoot him a text, right? Let him know where I'm at, right? It depends on the patient and the individual going through it. But that's why that part resonated with me, because I do vividly remember, like, okay, we've been at the hospital all day. My mom and parents are staying at my apartment now, right? And we're going to go back again in the morning, right? Because they don't live in New York City. And we get home and she was on her phone, like having to text so many people. And I don't really think we processed it, because you get back and you're just like zombie.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was a lot of added pressure and stress on my mom to have to update everyone what was going on with her son, right? So again, Carrying Bridge became that avenue for us. And so I can't remember who recommended it. So glad they did. And I've seen it over the years be used with different patients. It's a way that I can sometimes stay close, right? Because Facebook's tough. You have to like go to their profile. There's so many weed through things. But Carrying Bridge was just kind of journal entries, right? Of what people were going through, updates. And it was a way for me to, especially in the early days of Stash Strong, when we only knew 10, 20 patients going through it, I could kind of keep tabs and see how everyone was doing. And then I could know to reach out if something drastic changed. And what it did is it made sure they didn't have to say, okay, I got to text Colin that there was a recurrence today. It's like, no, take that pressure off you. Put it, again, if you're willing, able, and comfortable with doing that online, that became a really good avenue for us.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it was great to hear Dave's perspective too, because he is a long-term patient. He's thriving. He's doing great. So I think it's really interesting to hear how he dealt with things, and sort of from a different perspective that obviously you and I don't have. So I think it's obviously everything is circumstantial, and it's nice to hear different people's perspectives, because those that listen to this podcast are a huge mix of patients, caregivers, doctors, like it's everyone. So I think it's nice to have these different perspectives, definitely.
Yeah, I think it helped coming from him, right?
Yeah.
I think his energy and
it's amazing.
His perspective were, eye-opening, right?
Yeah.
I was captivated by listening to him speak. Even he had to think about that, right?
For sure.
So I think it kind of, if you realize that even the most outgoing person on camera or visually is also thinking about that, it's happening in each family that is faced with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on another segment of Deep Dive with Stash Strong.